It's not the case that, you sprinkle some AI and all of a sudden everything becomes cheap and easy. These are very complex data pipelines. You have to make sure that they're auditable for compliance reasons, for accounting reasons. Many of our clients report to public markets. I can't just say, oh, well, the LLM said it was X, we'll figure it out tomorrow. Oh, we got it
wrong.
Got
it from ChatGPT,
right?
Exactly.
It doesn't work that way, right?
Right.
So this infrastructure is actually very serious, and it really matters to our clients to get it right. So there is definitely a cost associated with that. It's also the case that many clients have very custom deployments of a lot of these ERPs. No two ERPs really look the same, even though in theory they could.
Hi, Adam Gower here, founder of GowerCrowd.com and host of this podcast YouTube series, AI in Real Estate. Thank you for joining me today. My guest today is LD Salmanson, who is co-founder and CEO at Cherre. And we're going to be doing a demo of the platform. So if you are listening, go ahead and listen. We do our best to make it clear what is on screen, but definitely better if you can watch by video. Just go to GowerCrowd.com, find the podcast page, and you'll find the video there. While you're there, of course, go ahead and subscribe to the newsletter. You can always unsubscribe. And I distribute updates on best practices for AI across real estate via that newsletter, right? So that's at gowercrowd.com. Now, Cherre is a real estate data management and intelligence platform that unifies fragmented property market and operational data into a single trusted system so that organizations can drive faster, more informed investment, underwriting, and asset management decisions. Their technology standardizes and connects disparate data sources to create a comprehensive single source of truth, as it is known for real estate professionals. Now, if you've been wondering about agents and how they work and what they are, stick around for the end of the podcast where LD demos a drag and drop agent building tool that will give you a sense of how this side of the AI world is developing. It's really cool to watch. It looks similar to the logic funnels that we build, but obviously vastly more powerful than just yes, no decisions across those logic trees. So definitely stick around for that towards the end of the demo. All right, let's get on with it. LD Salmanson, co-founder and CEO at Cherre, coming right up. LD, it's good to see you again. Thanks so much for joining me. All right, let's start right at the very top. Who are you? What is your company? And what does your platform do?
It's great to be here. So I'm LD. I'm one of the founders here at Cherre. Been around now since the end of 2018 when we launched. We're the largest data management analytics company for the built world. We cover all real assets, although obviously commercial real estate is the core of what we do. And we help our clients, typically large asset managers, banks and insurance companies, also a lot of technology companies today built on top of our platform, connect all their internal financial operational data. So that means anything from ERPs to CRMs to modeling tools to all their third-party data, meaning data that they buy about the market, about assets, or a lot of alternative data, what we used to call that. And we help them connect all that data to a single source of truth in a repeatable, reliable, and consistent manner, then deliver that data downstream to something actionable. Often that means back into their data warehouses if they have a technical team that knows what to do with it downstream. But if that's not the case, it very often goes into dashboards, or we'll see also some AI tools. We also have a quality layer that sits on top of that, so I can track every single piece of data from the source to its final destination, be able to say, where did it come from? What happened along the way? Can I trust this when it goes into a business process? So that's kind of us in a nutshell.
So are you providing data, or you're just going in and providing the infrastructure for people to consolidate the data streams that they already have?
It's a great question. It depends on the client. We always provide what we call our foundation layer. There's this core, what we call our canonical graph. I can show you some of this a little later when we dive in. The way we understand the world. We have a giant knowledge graph in the middle. It's very massive. And that's the basis for what we think the built world needs to look like, and everything anchors to that. The basis of that knowledge graph we provide to everyone. We think that you shouldn't have to buy that from somebody else. It's the best in the world already, definitely for North America. And we want that to be the anchor that everyone builds on top of. But that's not really enough for any real commercial operator to answer most of the questions we're trying to answer on a day-to-day basis. And we're not designed to be that, right? It's designed to be this kind of base layer that you build on top of. So the vast majority of our clients, I would say almost all of them, will connect their internal data. That's the most important part. They're trying to connect and anchor and resolve internally. And the second part of it is pull in that third-party data that either they're already buying, often the case from some of the major vendors, or they're going to buy through our marketplace. So you have about 120, 130 vendors on the marketplace, all the names that you know, probably some exceptions. And we can connect all those data vendors through the marketplace to those same sources of truth for that client.
Wow, fascinating. So who is your client or user avatar? Who's the ideal client for you?
I would say our biggest clients are the core asset managers. So folks have multi-asset class, multi-geography, typically very large, complex funds. Whether they're private equity funds or REITs, those are kind of our bread and butter. We don't really discriminate. I would say anybody over about $500 million is very, very much in the core of our world. We do have smaller clients. It really depends on how much the complexity is. But really anywhere across the stack. Our second best clients are kind of the banks and insurance companies trying to solve something like, how do I underwrite assets much faster? How do I understand risk much faster? And then finally, a very big group of clients, as well as our technology clients. So these are other technology firms built on top of our platform. These are some of the biggest names in the industry that you might not know are building on top of Cherre, but they're using our anchors, they're using our platform to be able to do things for their clients.
So I'm going to call it primarily institutional level client is more so because of the complexity of setting up and operating with the Cherre platform, or because of pricing, or for some other reason. I mean, it sounds like it's
many
perfect for everybody.
reasons.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd say it's many reasons. One is, if you have two assets, there's a lot of complexity there, right? You kind of know where they are. You can walk them. You may even live in one. You really don't need a lot of tools. I mean that very seriously. You may not need a lot of tools to be able to run your day-to-day business, and you probably don't consume a lot of tools on generally. The more complexity, the more you need tools, right? It's very much the case that things like this are not cheap. And I know we're in this world, we've been an AI leader for a long time. That hasn't changed today in this world. Surely we're just as much a leader today, if not more. It's not the case that, you sprinkle some AI and all of a sudden everything becomes cheap and easy. These are very complex data pipelines. You have to make sure that they're auditable for compliance reasons, for accounting reasons. Many of our clients report to public markets. I can't just say, oh, well, the LLM said it was actually, we'll figure it out tomorrow. Oh, we got it
Got
wrong.
it from ChatGPT.
Right?
Exactly.
It doesn't work that way, right?
Right.
So this infrastructure is actually very serious, and it really matters to our clients to get it right. So there is definitely a cost associated with that. It's also the case that many clients have very custom deployments of a lot of these ERPs. No two Yardis really look the same, even though in theory they could. And that complexity requires some type of forward deployed engineer to be able to see what that looks like. It could be as short as a day and taking a look at their schemas and outputs, and it works well. It also means 3-4 months of a really complex deployment. So depending on the complexity of that deployment, that means time and money that's being spent. So that's why we typically focus on that. So it's either the problem is more acute as clients get more complex, more asset classes, more geographies, more dollars spent, right? More things can go wrong. Or it's just about, how is it that the process works and how much cost it is to be able to deploy that within the environment.
So give me some examples of how people actually use Cherre.
Yeah, I'd say the most common example, our large asset managers will connect, first of all their internal data. So that means the financial operational data from all the different funds they have. So they'll pull in from, residential and retail and in office. You'll typically get roll-ups of leases and accounting trial balances and P&Ls. All that kind of rolls up. It comes in many ways. We'll see some of that when we see the demo. It can come in directly through pipelines, directly integrate into the core applications. It can come through submissions, depending on different types. Maybe I don't have control over that asset, even though I own it. Somebody else manages it for me, and I'm getting stuff in PDFs or Excel templates. It could be in various different ways. And I'll connect usually things like my CRM tools, Deal Cloud, Deal Path, Altrio, things like that, Salesforce. So Yardi, MRI, RealPage are kind of most common, Entrada, JD Edwards, SAP. We'll often see things like valuation platforms. Argus is definitely the most popular for our large clients. We're seeing some of the ESG platforms, right? Measurable, DeepKey, and the list goes on and on of those applications. That usually, and there's a lot of internal stuff, right? So that will usually cover, what do I own? Where do I own it? How is it performing versus budget versus underwriting in the most simple sense? I can highlight some risk. I can take action. That's kind of the basics. I'm typically also connecting third-party data, right? So I want to be able to answer things about the market. Some of our biggest partners are folks like Green Street, TREP, RCA, MSCI, Reese Moody's. We've done a lot of work with Hello Data recently, Hubexo, which covers some of the building permits. So a lot of those big data vendors are very popular, and I'm sure I'm forgetting somebody really important.
Okay, so let me ask about, so that's quite interesting. So you talked about Hello Data, and I'm just kind of backtracking through some of the conversations that I've had recently. So I've been talking to platforms that use Hello Data to pull in comps, right? Simple example. So how is Hello Data interacting with Cherre? Are they pulling data from Cherre, or are they a service provider that you can sign up for on the Cherre platform?
They're a data vendor. So if you think
Vendor.
about Hello Data
Okay.
for smaller companies or for maybe more a lot of the market, they'll send a report or a comp list or something like that that's kind of transactional.
Mm.
For large clients, they're getting a data feed, right? I want everything in the market. I don't want to just know what's happening with this one property I'm analyzing. I'm going to run this across hundreds of markets and I want to see how those things are changing over time.
Mm.
I want to see micro movements for pricing. Those things are very, very different than kind of classic, I just want to look at one-off reports. We deal with the world of data connectors. So when I say those data vendors I mentioned, that's not people buying a license, a seat. Those are people buying a data connection. They're getting a pipeline, which will either update, daily, hourly, weekly, depending on the data vendor. And it's connected to their entire system. So when I ask, how are we performing versus market? I can say, well, what's the Green Street, benchmark for so and so? And let me look at the last 10 transactions in the market from RCA and kind of pricing. And what's the debt, look like from TREP in the public market, et cetera. And you kind of get the idea.
All right, so very keen to see this demo, LD, to just put some visualization on what that means. We didn't do it last time, so I'm keen to do that. But let me ask this. How are people solving the problem that you solve today without Cherre? Well, like, what
Well,
are they doing? Yeah.
yeah, either they don't. And then when you ask them, how are you performing? They say, oh, I'm doing great. And
Exactly.
then you say, how do you measure it? Well, I don't really measure. If the market goes up, I'm really smart. If the market goes down, it's the market's fault, right? So that's one answer. You'd be surprised how much we hear that. Another answer, which is for definitely the more both intellectually honest and I would say our best clients before they became clients, is they did it manually. So they had a whole team in-house or a team of consulting firms that did it for them. There were teams of people collecting documents and processing. Another team taking that data and distilling. Another team building benchmarks and dashboards and whatever the case may be. And that is very difficult to maintain over time because the data isn't consistent. Every time something changes, every time somebody leaves, that kind of breaks down. And those processes erode. So every few years, you rebuild them. So it's very expensive, very unreliable, very slow, very brittle. So that's the alternative.
All right, so I'll tell you what. Let's migrate into screen share. You have control over that. I'll let you drive. So, what would as we open this up, apart from a demo, what are showing somebody a demo? What is the biggest pushback that you typically get when you first speak to someone? Like, what's the challenge to selling what it is that you've got here? Do you find like the resistance?
And we don't see a lot of resistance these days, thankfully, especially in the age of AI, it's become a lot more prominent. I would say
Mm.
for large clients that already have something built, the resistance is, I'm the guy who built it. And I just spent the last 3 years
Ah,
explaining to the organization why they should give me a lot of money to build it. And if I bring you in, I have to explain to them either A, why what I built isn't that great and we should, change it. Usually that leads to really bad results. We found that all around. But so that's one answer. Or I just don't have budget yet. So I have to go through some type of cycle. We're figuring it out. Some big consulting firm told us they can do it. Palantir is a great example. Really talented people, very smart people that really don't understand this industry very well. So they might make a promise. Somebody has to go and, advise, look at that. By the way, I think it's very soon the case that Palantir will be a very active player with our large clients across the board. I think they're very talented people. So sometimes you see that some of the big consulting firms. Today, almost every major consulting firm is a partner of ours, so that's changed a lot over the years, and they deploy Cherre. We're really grateful to work with them. I would say PwC is probably one of our favorite to work
really?
with. Alpha Lion Point is another one. Really, really Alpha Alternatives, I guess they're called today. Those two are by far the most exciting partners to work with. They're very forward thinking. They add a lot of value to their clients.
Fascinating. All right, good. Here we go. So is this the dashboard that somebody sees when they log in? Just, you know what? So just before we do go into this, If you are listening to this podcast, I do recommend that you go to the Gower Crowd website and find the show notes page. The video is there, but LD and I will do our best to describe, for those who aren't seeing what is on the screen, what is on the screen, but definitely better to watch on video. LD, go ahead. For the person listening,
Absolutely.
do your best.
So what you see here is kind of a spider chart. So you see three kind of boxes coming from the left. Those are your data sources. They feed into Cherre, and then they go out to three different places: search, dashboards, eRIS. I'll show you some of these components.
Okay.
On the left is what we call data in, Cherre Connect. So Connect for our large clients will typically come in through application connectors, a direct connector into a Yardi or MRI or something like that. Those are application connectors pre-built for that use case. I'm sure there's some edge case they don't cover, but that allows you to immediately connect into that source without having to rethink about how does that model work, how do I handle things like observability, things like quality, all of that just works out of the box. And we have connectors to many of the applications that you might imagine. I mentioned some of them earlier, and I'm sure there's some long tail that we haven't touched yet.
Mm-hmm.
The second thing you see there is market connectors. Again, these are standard pipelines. For the vast majority of our data vendors, those are pre-configured with Cherre. If you already have a license or key, it's basically as simple as turning on. If you don't have one, you can typically buy through us. If you can't buy through us, typically we have an agreement with that vendor where you buy directly from them. And because it's already connected, we just provision it for you. So it's really, really fast and simple. And when we connect these things, again, when we turn it on, it's connected to all your other data automatically, right? So you don't have to do anything special. We'll talk about that. And finally,
Yeah.
data submission portal. I might have a lot of documents that get submitted to me on a regular basis. So often the most common is I own the asset, but I don't manage it. So I'm gonna get trial balances, P&Ls, lease rolls on a monthly basis. That's by far the most common. And we have a whole process there for the ingestion of those data sets, automatically parsing them and reviewing them, having humans in that process of submissions and approval. All that happens. You'll see in a minute. And then finally, that could also work for many other things. So maybe I'm in the retail space and I need the sales data for breakpoints, or you can imagine an endless kind of list there. It's not designed to be limited to just one, three use cases. It's designed to be very, very thorough. I don't know, there's like 25 different document archetypes that it already knows how to handle conceptually, but that's expanding by the minute.
Okay.
That all flows into Cherre, right? So what does that mean? Again, it doesn't flow into Cherre. It flows into that client-specific instance of Cherre. So just like a Databricks or Snowflake, when this gets provisioned, it's a client environment. We don't get to see what's inside it, right? We're there deploying it for you. Maybe somebody else could deploy it for you, but it's really not a Cherre environment. We just call it Cherre in the middle there.
Okay.
What happens in between there is everything gets modeled, everything gets delivered in a consistent manner. In there, we have observability rules. We'll see some of that. Is the data flowing the way I expect it to flow? We also see some business logic rules. Or is the data doing the things we expect? Start date before end date of a lease or things like that. But when it gets to that middle, I now need to have everything connected. The first thing it does, it hits our universal data model. That means our best version of the built world for all real assets. It covers almost everything. I'm sure there are new things we haven't seen yet. It's not rigid. You can extend it. You can add objects. You can add fields. You don't have to use objects or fields, but it's our best view of the world that we start with. The next thing it hits is what we call a semantic model. It's great that I might call something whatever I want, but you might call it something else. And that allows you to do that, right? So we start with the broadest view of semantic model and allows multiple semantic models. They might be tailored to an asset class or a geography, or might be something that's very unique to your organization. They might be stacked and layered in different ways. Finally, it gets mapped to a knowledge graph, very, very large knowledge graph. We're talking about 4 billion legal entities, 2 billion addresses, about 160-ish million, a little less parcels, maybe a little under 100 million buildings. So very, very broad view of the universe. It allows you to understand hidden connections, allows you to extract information there. And what's the real beautiful part is, while you don't get to see everyone else's data, because the core knowledge graph is constantly enriched with metadata, your knowledge graph will be better than what it would have been alone without having to know any of the other folks' data. It just gets better. Oh, I now know that two things are connected, but I don't know why, because I don't have the rights to see somebody else's data, but I can see some relationship that I wouldn't have otherwise known, which is really cool.
It would be, I don't know if that's a concept that you're able to show on the screen here. It's a bit difficult for me anyway, because probably just because I'm not that bright. But it's a bit difficult for me to understand what that actually looks like for a user.
I'm going to show every one of these pieces.
Okay, all right, perfect. All right. Thank you.
No, for sure. And then, of course, nothing matters here in the middle because it has to go into some type of business user, right? So search, we'll see in a minute, allows me to kind of play with those properties and kind of look around the world.
Mm.
Dashboards, as the name sounds, it's going to look like a dashboard environment. And then for the technical users, I might want to push that into something else. So let's start with the back of the world and then move into the front. So
And
this is
this,
what happens. Yeah.
what we're looking at here, this is the dashboard that a user will see when they log in.
Yeah, I'm going to
Uh,
start with behind the scenes and then work our
okay.
way to the front of the house, right?
Okay.
So
Sure.
if I think about, actually, let's go the other way around. Let's start with the front of the house and work our way back.
Okay.
So let's start with maybe kind of the investment side of the world and then
Mm.
work our way back to the asset management, then work our way all the way back kind of to the pipelines.
Okay.
So here we're looking at a view of the world. Maybe I want to see things in my deal system, right? So I just toggled on things in my deal. In this case, it's a deal cloud connector. So I can click on assets and see which ones, are being either acquired or already in my pipeline, et cetera. I'm going to turn that off. Maybe I want to look at assets in Los Angeles. So I'm going to go look up Los Angeles, and you can see it's asking me, what do you mean by Los Angeles? Because there's not an official definition of a city, right? We have counties, we have MSAs that are really fluid, but a city is kind of a weird thing. We very much like the Green Street market boundaries. We work very closely with them. In this case, I'm going to show you a demo with office because I'm going to look at maybe an office distress.
That was interesting. So what popped up when you put in the word Los Angeles there was the word Los Angeles office, but underneath it said Green Street. So is that because what you're pulling now is Green Street data? Is that what that means?
Exactly. Different clients might have different boundaries. So we support, a client might say, I want the Reese boundaries. Another client might say, I have my own definition. I'm going to give you my boundaries. We need to be able to support that on the fly for everything. So what you saw here is actually a really powerful demonstration of we can support any type of boundary in real time. So I said Los Angeles. I think I want to see office. I might want to go search there. Sorry, I want to clear filters. So, I actually want to show you that in a second. So let me go and actually open up the MSA and we'll actually show you that live. So for those who are not able to look, I just highlight Los Angeles MSA and you have one type of boundary. So you can see things like Catalina and things like that that are selected there as well. But if I select Los Angeles office market in Green Street, that's going to limit that significantly less. So all of a sudden Catalina is no longer there, right? Because when I think about this as, mostly commercial folks, I think about a different type of market. So this is exactly the point there. Now I only want to see office assets here. And when I look inside office, I'm not really looking at medical and mixed use. So I'm toggling on or off different types of options. And I'm also going to go down here and let me look at, assets that have a mortgage over 10 million. So maybe I'm looking for some distress situation. And you can see on the bottom, I can search by RCA and other data vendors. You get the idea. It doesn't really matter in this case. I have no idea what I'm going to open here. So we're going to find out together. I'm literally going to open one randomly and we'll find out. Always fun to do demos with literally no prep, and I love it that way.
Exactly, because it's never going to work the way you want it.
No, I don't mind. I love the platform. So I can see all the information about the asset, whatever I can, whatever connectors there. I can see the unmasked owners behind the LLC. In this case, I can see some mortgages. Not the best asset to open up, so I'm going to open up another one because there's just not that much information there.
Okay. So if you had done, okay, go ahead. So
another one open here. You can typically see images of the asset, parcel information, building information, tax information, whatever vendors I have connected, obviously. I see the owner here behind the LLC. I can see your transaction. I can see mortgage. If there's a Comstack lease in a building, you'll see Comstack leases. You get the idea here. I'm also going to click out here and go to a dashboard now that has to do with underwriting. So I'm jumping ahead, moving into kind of the dashboard side of the world. The first thing I might want to do in underwriting is bring all the information together from all the different sources that I might want to run. Before I go into a model, I just want to kind of be able to see what that looks like. And you're seeing that load here. I might want to see historical transactions. So that's past transactions, things like that. I want to see the loan summary. In this case, it's pulling from TREP, I believe. Again, different partners might have, depending on what the clients have. So all the information about the asset, you can see some demographic information here as well. Often the next thing I want to see is comps, right? We were talking about that earlier. In this case, I want to look at sales comps first. So when I go into sales comps, I want to see, what's going on in capital markets. I can kind of play with that. I can dive into any of these assets. You got to get the idea.
Where is it pulling these comp data from?
Depending on the client, it would be a different vendor, right? So each client will have a different deployment. So it's completely dynamic based on the client, based on asset class. So in this case, it's an office. So rents will come from office leases. If I was in multifamily, it would come from something else. So It's also very dynamic based on the asset class and based on the sources available to the client.
So when you searched for Los Angeles and Green Street popped up, that would be a client specific outcome when you ran that search. If they had access to Green Street data, they may have access to somebody else's data, and it might say CoStar, for example, instead.
We are not a partner of CoStar, so that's the only
okay?
vendor I
Not
think of the large
CoStar.
vendors that we don't connect in that way.
Okay.
Green Street's a closer partner, so those boundaries we typically use in the Cherre platform pretty universally for everyone as our base. We think they're the best out there. You can always change them to something else, but our base start is Green
Ah.
Street because we think they are
Okay.
the best, and our partnership with them supports
Okay.
them.
That's what you were describing when we started. This kind of base knowledge graph that you have is
Yeah,
something
so
that.
that one's not part of our base. That one's actually a third-party vendor that we leverage as part of that for sure.
Okay. All right. Got it.
Yeah, and again, it's just the boundary. It's not the actual data. If you want the data of from Green Street, that's data that you typically have to purchase from Green Street, and
I
you
see.
often did that before
But
Cherre.
you can subscribe to that through Cherry and it'll pipe it through into your Cherry dashboard.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay. Got it.
So you can hear a lot more information here, right? So market analytics, capital markets, that each one of these is its own little world of information. Again, there's a performance benchmark and operating benchmark are some of my favorite. Sorry, I clicked on the wrong one. Performance is also interesting. I didn't mean to belittle that one. It's also interesting as well. But operating is one that I like a lot. It's a data set that we worked on with Trepp a couple of years ago that I really like because it allows you to go into all those different statements and rip out kind of what is the actual performance kind of at the asset class level, at a specific type of line item. So what am I spending on repair and maintenance? And again, I'm showing you a high level here, but you can dive in here and it gets very, very specific and you kind of do some more stuff there. I'm not going to show all of this, but POIs are very important. What's around me, especially in retail or experience type industries. Nearby projects, I really love these data sets from BCI, Abexo. I really want to know what's coming on the market soon. People underappreciate how important those things are.
Yeah.
I also want to know how long projects typically take to complete. That's really, really valuable data. So I really want to know what the pipeline looks like and how things are evolving.
Interesting. So
And then
this
finally,
is,
yeah.
yeah.
Sorry?
This is like local government permit and application data that's being piped in through another vendor, a data.
Correct. And they're really tracking that stuff really carefully. Yeah, it's really great.
It's really
we
incredible
also
because
parse
I've been in this business, and you basically all you do is you jump around all the different websites to try and get the information. Right? You might go to the local government, Zemus in LA, and you got to pull it in there. And then you got to go somewhere else and pull it in there. Then you go somewhere
And
else.
Zemus is one of the good ones, right? If you go out to like
Zemus is
Maricopa
good.
County, there's nothing.
Steam powered,
Yeah,
exactly.
exactly.
So
They
this
just
is
don't care.
everything in one dashboard, basically. That's what you're
Yeah,
talking.
and to be fair, the power is never the dashboard, in my opinion, although I know users always get excited about the dashboard. The power at the end of the day is in the data behind the scenes, right? If the data is connected, it can be accessed in many ways. We'll actually talk about that in a minute. But
Okay.
as I'm switching now just from investor to an asset manager point of view, I
Okay.
might want to look at the asset kind of high level. Again, everything here, I'll actually open up another version of this that we can come back to in a second, just for deep dive just into the asset management use case here. There we go. But typically as a landing page, I might want to see things at the fund level. I might want to see different verticals that again, most of our clients are multi-asset class, multi-geography. I might want to just dive into risk and debt analysis, right? Just give me a risk portfolio. What does that look like? Are we funded? Are we not funded? You can see here the loan screener. I can see how we're doing by market. I can dive into each one of my KPIs. I can look at my acquisition pipeline. The portfolio management is very interesting because then I get to see, what are we looking like? How is different portfolios might have different strategies. How are they performing? Geography. And then I can look at concentration across all of them together for the first time, not just kind of an asset by asset, portfolio by portfolio. I'm not going to go into all these tabs here, but you get the idea. I can look at foundations, again, the core data set, SFR. Some of our clients are really big into the SFR. It's kind of its own unique little world, and we have a lot of
Single family for those that don't. I assume that's what this is.
Exactly, yeah, and also the build for rent, I would say, kind of falls into that world. And yeah, there's a lot of kind of uniqueness to that, so we kind of put that a little separate. And then market analytics more broadly. I'm looking now just dive into classic asset management. What do I own? Where do I own it? Right, so I can see here properties by market, by square foot, et cetera, with a lot of different metrics on top. Maybe I want to benchmark that. Again, back to what we discussed earlier. I want to see, in this case, I'm looking versus NCREIF. A lot of our clients are NCREIF members. It could be versus Odyssey. Again, everyone has their own world. And again, I could dive in by asset manager, by market, by everything, analytics, all that kind of stuff. I might just want a data table because you might say, Heldy, that's great, But what about property? But I don't know. Whatever it is that you want, you should be able to look for it here. And you shouldn't have to ask me to do something there, right? I typically care about financials as well. So here I care about all the different income streams that I have and how they're changing over time, all my different expense streams. And again, the statement. Operations, again, move-ins and move-outs and leasing. Again, depending on the asset class, you might see different things. Leasing, again, I want to see that everybody what's going on there. Typically, I want to see details as well. So upcoming expirations, and here I got an expiration. It can also do some cool things like, let's say you're a CompStack licensee. You can also then go, show me all the other leases that are about to expire in the area that might be relevant to go fill this space. So I might want to go and reach out to those folks before and go fill the space, which is kind of cool. I can go look up literally tenant by tenant, and I can see, list and dive into each one. Again, across my portfolios, across my funds, in any way I want to slice and dice, which is also very cool. I want to actually work our way back, right? Because that's all cool, but I want to show how that actually works behind the scenes.
All right.
So the first way data comes into that universe is through connectors. That's what we're seeing here. So on the top right here, we have the source library, and again, 150, maybe a little less sources there. On the bottom right, you can see a delivery schedule. So all these things sit on a delivery schedule. In the middle, you see the connectors with some information up on top. It says no connectors found in the publish here, but that doesn't mean there are none there. There aren't any there. There's publish, QC, and dev. We have pipelines in different stages, right? So some are production. I want to put them in production. Some I might say, you know what, I'm still not ready to move them to production. So in an enterprise environment, I have to be able to promote these connectors up and down based on their maturity and based on their quality. Here we're looking at that first one. That's a VTS connector here. And if I go into that, you can see three things. First is there's a source, right? This is how the data came from the source. We have a lot of influence in the way we work with those data vendors, but we don't get to decide for them what the data source looks like, right? That's how it came. In the middle, we apply all those Cherre models, right? So apply our standard model, our semantic model, our graph model. We'll hopefully have time to show some of that. And by the way, they're editable, they're stackable. A lot of that can work. I mentioned that earlier. And then here, very common, where does it go? And you might say, LD, thank you so much for modeling and what you think is the best in the world. I don't care. This is how I need to see it at the end. And you better make it like that or you're kind of useless to me. Again,
so these middle steps, just to put it into language that I understand, is basically taking data and translating it into the language that the client speaks. The way that they consume data, it's
so taking data from the source, connecting it to this common language that all the data vendors that Cherre's ever seen, all the applications have ever seen, and that's connecting to the specific client, unique data connection and semantics, such that when the client sees it at the end, they get the benefit of everything all in one.
I see.
The next thing we're going to see here is observability. And you see, I don't have anything on publish. Well, I have a couple things on publish I can go see there, right? So we can't run observability on developer pipelines. So when I dive in here, we have two different types of observability. Is it running on columns or tables? And there are a lot of rules here, and it runs on all these different tables, different ways. I'm not going to go too deep into that, but I just want to see that things are working the way I expect, right? Did I drop files or things, not what I expect to see from a data standpoint, right? Engineers will really care about this running over time. Because I just want to make sure that my information at the end, when I looked at that dashboard, I don't want to know exactly how it came. I just want to know that it works. I want to know that if there's a problem, I can go back to the source and figure that out. Here we have data validation rules. I can create very complicated, very simple rules. In this case, what's the first one there that failed? Expiring base rent amount is not less than. Okay, so we have something wrong with the base rent. It shouldn't be less than zero, and it's negative. So something's wrong there, right? Again, I want to be able to map all these things and figure stuff out. And again, there's a data model dictionary. I'm not going to go into all those tools now. The second way data comes in.
Who manages this side of the business? This is Cherre side, or this you would have an IT or tech person on the client side that would monitor this?
It depends on the client.
Well, that's not going to be an asset manager, is it? That's or asset.
The build. Once you build connectors, if everything went well, you build them during deployment. You don't have to touch anything. And then you add a connector, you add it, and we'll typically do that as part of our onboarding team.
Right.
It could be other, IT integrators outside, so like an Alpha Lion Point or a PwC or FTI might do that on behalf of a client as well. We're very indifferent, right? The platform is the power, and if a client has a technical team, they can also do it in-house potentially.
Okay.
Here's where an actual asset manager might spend time, right? Assume I have a lot of submissions coming in as PDFs. Well, if they're coming in as a lot of PDFs, I need to now have those being processed on a regular basis. So you can see here there are batch deliveries. You can see it's coming by fund. I can check by status. I just want to look at some that are not going well. So I'm going to look at ones that have failed, right? And if I look at the ones that have failed, I can dive in. I can see, oh, what happened here? Oh, it's past due date, on time, it's stuck. I can see things that are, issues along the way here. Why does this need to work? Again, everything happens automatically behind the scenes. But when I'm reviewing this, all I really care about is, are we on target? No. I have this file. It's not looking like what I expected. Maybe there was age delinquencies that didn't line up. Maybe it was a chart of accounts mismatch. Maybe there was some kind of transaction that didn't work the way I expected. Maybe the trial balances didn't line up. Whatever the problem is, I'm going to show you what the problem is. So you can exactly say to the submitter, right, before they even submit, hey, it didn't pass the checks that we defined as an organization. Go fix it before you submit again. Oh, my bad, resubmit, everything's done. So as the receiver, my life got way easier than it was before. My life as a submitter is also actually easier because what I used to have to do is create this stupid template for anyone on the other end. Instead, all I have to do is drop it in once. It automatically identified it. I just have to map the fields, make it easy. That's it. So long as I didn't change the way I dropped it in every time, it's just going to understand it, right? So
Plus, as the submitter, you're going to get an alert if something is misaligned as well, presumably.
yeah, it will tell you, hey, you didn't pass the checks. That's it, right? And it's as simple as that. It will come in, it'll tell you have to do something and fix it there. And it's really great because then I can see, oh, something didn't work on this data set. I have to go dive in and fix it. Here we have a batch, so multiple files were submitted at once. You can see, there's a target, there's different types of files here. Again, you get the idea. So this is a very, very powerful way of handling massive amounts of submissions that a lot of our clients have to deal with. Data coming in from applications easier, data coming in from data files a lot harder.
So, LD, are you finding that the quality of input data is going up because of this QC layer that you have?
Oh, absolutely. The more we're able to catch things in the early stages, the better things are for everyone.
Meaning that what I mean is that in future, that incidence of fails is going down because it's just making people more effective and proficient in what they're doing.
Yeah, the more things you can fix at the source, the better. That's generally the idea. The more things you can identify as patterns and tell the user ahead of time, or not even tell the user, just identify the pattern and fix it for them, the better, in my opinion. And we've really moved into that type of environment. There will be issues along the way that we'll have to figure out and how we do better there. But generally, I think that's the way to handle it. The less we require users to do, the better. And I think in an agentic world that's already here in many ways, but moving very quickly, no human's going to have to review these things. It should be completely automated. So we've designed the process to be automated from start to finish. I think the humans are there to kind of be, gatekeepers as the technology evolves to become to the level that we support.
Yeah.
One before last thing I'll show you here is what we call Cherre Studio or Agent Studio. We have a lot of agents that you saw in the marketplace and what we call work packages. Agents do kind of smaller tasks like calculate NOI or analyze a PDF or something like that. They could be judgment or tool-based. They could be deterministic or non-deterministic. A work package is a set of these agents packaged together that serve a broader purpose that, I need these three to be chained together to do something. Those are available kind of off the shelf. We can just deploy them with clients and just use them. And for our large clients, we either have 4 deployed engineers there or consulting firms do with us, or they just know how to do it themselves and are deploying these agents across the board.
Yeah, that's this Explore Agent Marketplace on the homepage, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And what I'm showing you here is something that's not on the web page, which is I want to show how I can create a new a new process from scratch. Maybe I want to do something like, hey, every time something happens, like in this case, I have a manual trigger. That's my first step. I want to go to a Cherre source. In this case, I want to go to a specific bucket that I'll configure. I don't know, maybe a budget. And I actually want to create another one here. And I'm going to go to another Cherre source. And then I want that to be my actuals. And I'll create a line here where it goes, back to the source here, right? So I'd have Cherre's budget and actual. And then I might want to have some kind of Cherre model that will do something in the middle and kind of model that data. And then I might want to have another process after that will say, in what I call here a chat model is not really a chat model, it's really just LLM. And this will actually then go and say, let's compare budget versus actual, right? And when I'm done with this whole process, I want it to go out to, let's say, I don't know, Slack. I want to get a Slack message with a report. Where is it? I don't even know. I'm looking here.
Got 8 million Slack channels
Yeah,
here.
exactly. So I'm just looking for send a
You
message.
need
There
an
we go.
agent to handle
Took me
those,
forever to
right?
find send a message there. Sorry. Yeah,
That's all
literally.
right.
So
Mm.
yeah, so what are we seeing here? Yeah, just to pull that here. I didn't properly chain it, but you get the idea.
Yeah.
What we're seeing here is I'm able to do something really cool. So if within Cherry, I'm already pulling for most clients the actuals, right? Those are coming from either from internal systems or from DSPs into their environment. We're also pulling for them most of the budgets, right? So what typically happens after that? Have this, budget versus actual process that's kind of, tedious, right? I have to go manually one by one. I have to go look at certain things. It's kind of annoying, right? And then I go back to the source and say, hey, why is our phone bill 200 here? It says 100 on the budget. Say, oh, no, the phone bill comes every other month. And the next month I'll ask you, why is the phone bill zero? And you say, yeah, it comes every other month. It's 100, right? It's really annoying. That is a real example. It's a really annoying one, right?
Mm.
Instead, we have an agent that just does that. Actually, it's a work package, which says, okay, let me just take all your past, variance reports. Let me take all the submissions. Let me try and answer that by yourself. So we say, well, we already know that's cash versus accounting accrual, that 100, it's not 100, that's why it's 0, 200. We'll just fix that. And it said here that you're underperforming by 1% versus versus budget. But by the way, the rest of the market's underperforming by 4%. So the commentary should actually say something good about that. So we'll draft some commentary. Now you could, in
Mm.
theory, just submit that, right? But you want to typically have a human in the loop, especially in early cases, so you can send that back to the submitter, that asset manager or whatever the property manager at the bottom. Bottom, I don't mean in a derogatory, I mean at the bottom of
Yeah, yeah.
the chain of reporting. And you might say, hey, this is what I see. Is this good? We're going to report unless you say something. This is how it's going to be submitted. Or you might want to say you have to push next or something like that if you want to gate it. That's very powerful, right? Because you just want the process that's very manual, very time consuming, and completely automated. What we're doing, and I don't know if I can show this.
And what you just showed me with that flow chart, that was basically you built a workflow for an agent, right? And that's basically what an agent is. It does this, then it
That's
does that,
exactly what it does.
and then it punches out a result on a Slack channel. And really, and that's and you've built this in the background like a flow chart, right?
That
That's
was the
what.
intent, to
Mm,
make it very, very simple and easy.
that's incredible.
Something that I can just, kind of have a reality, that really is just built by really small bits.
It's really
We
interesting.
we see a world, very candidly, I say this,
Mm,
where pretty much everything is going to be broken down to the smallest atomized pieces. So
mm,
every single process in real estate, from very largest down to down to the small. So we've broken down to those small little
mm.
components, and each one of those small components will be very valuable on their own. I'm actually going to switch my screen and show you what that looks like.
That's an incredibly interesting comment, LD. Because I've always found that the best way to learn, and this is how I'm encouraging people in my universe to learn how to use AI, is to learn incremental steps. And the smaller those steps, the more it compounds. The easier it is to consume, and the more it compounds, the more you do it. Rather than trying to go from, okay, I know how to drag and drop into ChatGPT to coding, right? That's like an enormous step. But instead, you know how to drop something to ChatGPT. Next step, try deep research. It's just a really easy, small step. And so the idea that you just articulated that that's kind of how you see the industry being broken down with the
I
way
do.
data is managed, right? Is in just
Can you see
tiny
my the
incremental steps.
screen?
Yeah, it says
Yeah.
analyze buyer offers abstract lease terms. Okay, so what are we looking at here? This is
Yeah, so you're
page.
looking at a newer version of the UI that is not public yet. We'll get there a little later this year.
Okay.
And here you're seeing a lot of those sub agents, right? And some
Hmm.
of them are what we call tool agents, which kind of are less, judgment, and some of them are kind of judgment based, right? So if I went to a judgment agent, I can see what this does, right? So this automates monthly variance. I did not plan on opening monthly variance. It was completely by accident, and I'm really happy that happened by accident. I
What
have
what what happened? What?
I
Tell me
was
what you saw.
I had no
Yeah.
prep for this, as you saw, because you know the beginning of this conversation. I'm really happy
Yeah.
it's the one that opened. I wasn't even sure if this environment would open for me because I'm literally working at the same time. I have multiple Claude Code versions here on the side here running.
Okay.
So it tells you everything about what that agent does. What is the business
Ah.
context for that agent? What other things are being run here. So it's running multiple agents in a row here. It's also showing what the AI prompt is and it constantly gets better. What is the reasoning this prompt's going to do? It's going to take this input data, it's going to make these assumptions, it's going to push it out. What are some of the rules that have to be applied to it? So again, more detailed inputs, more detailed outputs. This is designed to be read by an agent, not by a human. Yes, a human can also read it, but it's really not designed for a human. You can see all the test cases here. I should be able to understand this all by myself without touching anything, right? And you can then run it and debug. I'm not going to get into what that looks like here. You kind of get the idea. I'll show you a couple more things.
So who built that? Did an agent build that agent or did a human build it?
We have moved at Cherre to a version where there's no such thing as humans building alone. I can't say that all of our code is written by Claude Code or something like that. That's definitely not the case. We definitely write a lot of code on our own still, but I would say we're moving to a world that more and more of the engineering job is to design, to architect, understand the domain and plan, and then manage the agents running. Very little of engineering work is becoming code, and I would say over the next 6 months, it's basically a solved problem for the most part. So we're seeing less and less of that. Most of what you see here on the screen, this new environment, surely was reviewed by human, but a lot of it was generated by the type of flow that I just mentioned. So
what are we looking at here? Yeah.
So you see on the left here, right? These are the connect, core, that's the knowledge graph, and quality, and the different alpha things. We even have some lab stuff around other tools. But here we're looking at the knowledge graph, right? So we said that big knowledge graph, and again, I'm limiting it a bit here because it can get pretty unwieldy. But I can look at this, in this case, investments. I can see all the information about that investment. I can then go, that has a deal on it, so I traverse to that node. It's in the life science space, or it's part of the CBSA. Let me go see what everything else is in the life science space, and now I can see all the assets in life science, and I can kind of traverse. I'm just traversing the graph, and you can see up on top. That's fun. I can also see this from different views. So in this case, I'm looking at it from a portfolio manager, but maybe I'm the fund manager, and I want to see different things. So I might want to see a different level of abstraction. Now I'm looking at it as a fund manager. And you can see it kind of clusters here in a very different way because funds might have kind of weird clustering. You can already see it kind of in the background clustering around in different ways. This is all running live, as you've noticed. It's a massive graph.
But what are these clusters then? I'm not quite following. They're not geographical, are they? Or are they? Are we looking at
they're semantic, right? So trying to understand the relationship between things. So I might say, well, here's a certain LP. How does that LP interact with other LPs, right? I'm masking this here because again, there's a lot of live information here, but I might want to say, if I'll actually turn some stuff off and show you some interesting things.
So it says IMV. Does that mean investor? Is that an investor?
It is. It's investor code.
I see.
It's the name of the investment because I didn't want to show the actual properties. So I can see here I have different funds, right? So I have a portfolio. So Atlas Core 2, and there are multiple asset classes inside it. And then I can see certain ways different things connect and interact. And you can also see if you zoom in, there's different arrows here of how some of these things relate to each other. It's kind of really cool. You can identify certain things. Again, it's not designed for a human. That's the coolest part of that. If I went to the market research, I can see again how certain things cluster. If I asked you, how do certain LPs interact? What type of things do they invest in? We can answer all these things on their own. That's my graph. In the center of that is my ontology. The ontology is Cherre's understanding of the built world. We think this is standard. This is facts, or these are facts. These are the type of things that are always true for everyone. Whereas my graph also includes my semantics, meaning I don't care what this says. When I define I might call it project. Well, project isn't a thing that you and I might define the same way. It's not a fact about the world. So I can put a new definition of project. I still want to see it on the graph. Again, this is the base stuff that nobody touches. And again, what is a county? Here's a definition of a county, right? That's what it is. It's across the board. Whereas my graph could be different from client to client. Last thing I want to show is just this on the homepage. Actually, two things I want to show. I'll actually open this here on a different page.
And this is all primarily driven by Claude, is it? Claude Code and...
we're model agnostic, completely. Different things, different parts of here have different models. Document extraction is running on like Lang Extract and Claude and Gemini. Again, I separate between what models power certain types of agents. Again, different agents have different models running for different use cases versus what we internally use for engineering. We use Claude Code for engineering. I don't know that we will ever do that. I don't know that it's better than Codex. People ask these questions, but I just know that that's what we use right now. What you're seeing on this screen is actually something really cool. I'm
Hmm.
looking at all, but depending on the user, you might see this at different levels of abstraction. So you might say, you might be, if I went into your settings, I might say that, you're part of some organization. Actually, I'll show it to you. So if I just went into settings, your profile, this is my profile. I might see what organizations I'm part of. And, I'm part of the investments team, the asset management team, or a different team. So I might see different things based on permissioning or based on, my role in the world, right? And the idea is that everything here needs to be automatically generated from the data. And again, I didn't show you here because like funds, portfolio, I didn't go into like every single screen here, but I want to have all this at my fingertips. And I want to know what I need to do. Hey, we have a major lease expiration in 45 days. I want to go to that asset and figure something out. I don't want some dashboard randomly over there and have to go figure out. Tell me what matters in my universe. And I want to teach you and say, hey, for example, I think there's like dashboard. Yeah, down here, right? Again, some stuff hasn't been fixed yet. But you can see here, I want to, customize this dashboard. I want to see this. I want to pin it, or I want to see certain pipelines. All that's really, really cool. I
And
love
so,
to, yep.
yeah, go ahead. So this data you were just showing me, those alerts, those are being triggered because in the background there's an agent crawling around trying to figure out is everything
Yeah, exactly.
compliant?
Many agents that are trying to figure out based on standard information, things that we understand about the market or how peers think about things, how you behave over time. So where you are in your organization, what you do, and how you've interacted with the environment and learned over time. And then just, suggesting things that we think might be interesting and learning from them as well.
Mm.
Depending on the page I'm on, when I open up my chat, or you can call it a Copilot, except I'm not very fond of the Copilot name. The first thing that comes up here is templates. These are agents you might want to run. So maybe if you're on a certain property page, you might want to compare. These are the kind of things that might be more relevant that you might want to check. But I can also start from scratch, and just say, hey, it doesn't work right now. Great for template for part of a demo. But you get the idea.
Of course, yeah.
It's not connected right now, so I'm not
Yeah.
going to get anything. But you get the idea. That's the coolest part. We're moving to a world where everything used to be, I need to be able to, kind of template it or push into some kind of, rigid environment to something where I can ask any question. It just works out of the box. I do
Mm.
have another version of that chat, by the way, if we wanted to actually demo it in a very working environment, but
The chat of chat, did you say?
of that kind of what we call Atlas. If you'd like, see if
Sure.
I can find it. You'll edit this in any way later, the intermediate here.
That's fine. I'll just ask you a question while you're doing that. So what is the onboarding process when you get a new client? How long does that take, and how complicated is it for clients to come up to speed to learn the platform well?
It depends on the complexity of the client more than anything. So if a client has their life together, meaning they have, an ERP documented, and they have access to the keys for their third-party data vendors, and they haven't, bastardized the hell out of that, ERP. It's just going to work really. You can onboard in a day, hours.
Really?
If the case is that all that's super custom and you don't actually have a chart of accounts because you never built one, and even though it's a very large organization, and you have 3 RDs and 2 MRIs and 1 RealPage because you bought 16 platforms along the way and never bothered connecting them, and no standard definitions across the board, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera,
I see.
that becomes more
Take longer.
complex. And again, those things might take 3 months. Yeah, it's not.
And then the dashboards or the way that people interact with the platform, that's all customized, is it, to the individual client? Or is it
It
a
definitely can
standard?
be. We
Yeah.
start with a standard, again, depending on what asset classes you have or whatever. We start with kind of our standard package, and again, you can customize whatever you want. We give a lot of flexibility.
Okay, so I don't want to take too much more of your time, but this now starts to look like something I recognize. And I was going to ask you this. Is there a chat function? So now you just opened up something that
So
has
I showed you
a
it on the
chat
other
with
screen
Cherre.
here.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'd showed you kind of in the other environment, this is going to be embedded in kind of that in the same way. Here we're looking at kind of a tool that we're still working on, something that I like. I just realized, anyway. So I can ask the question, assets by market, maybe.
What are we looking at here? Sorry, this is when you hit enter here, when you submit this prompt,
Yeah, so
this
what
is
we're seeing
working on
here,
a unique data set, or this is working on the entire Cherre data set, or
uh,
this would be
per
unique to
client.
the user, huh?
Per client, yeah. So it's pulling from the entire Cherry Graph things that are broad, that are allowed to access, but you're also
Mhm.
seeing it pull specific client data. So what we're seeing here is something really cool. It is a project we've been working on with one of our clients, which has another version of this that's really exciting that we can talk about probably another day. But what we're seeing here is the ability, first of all, when I ask a question, assets by market, it's not just saying a general LM question. It's understanding, well, what do you mean by assets? You can see some of that happening behind the scenes. It's going to interpret that. It's going to interpret that the same way every time. Go back and say, well, here, I understood what you meant by so-and-so, and here's how you define. Oh, you used a green street boundary within your organization. How do I know? Because you've defined it. Or you didn't define it? No problem. We ran an introspection query on your graph, and we found that out on our own. And here you can say it found, again, within my portfolio and showed some stuff. It says, do you want to do some drill down? I don't know. I'm asking stupid questions. I don't know if they're going to work as we've done this entire demo. We'll figure it out along the way. Do we have hospitality? We'll find out in a second.
That's interesting. But you can actually ask, you could ask NOI questions.
You can ask anything you want.
Are there any spikes in expenses or
anything you want? If you ask this question, it's going to go back to those cars you saw earlier, those agent skills. It's going to pull that, run the calculation on the information, and return that to the user. Right. I'll let that do one more, and then I'll just go into some stuff here, which I think is really cool.
Okay.
You can see here a few things, which calls skills in chart in store. Store is permanent information about that user and organization, meaning I know who you are. You're part of, asset manager X, you're part of department Y. You've been using the information as I know who you are, and I want to bring that into the context. That way we know everything works well. Skills is something that's a little more specific, that it's a way for you to teach the system over time how to improve. Now, here, great question. We have hospitality, over 107 hotel aspects, and here you can say extended stays. It gives you literally, these are the 4 names that we have, or what we have, what do you want to show about that? I'm not going to go into it. Sorry, I wanted to show store first. Store is the permanent information, right? These are my assets. In this case, we just added one of our clients for the purpose of a demo. Again, this is all over the place just for demo purposes. Skills are things that are one-offs, right? When I say my assets, what does that mean, right? You can see we've been playing with training different stuff here. Again, this is all for the purpose of demo. None of this is actually real. Well, it's real. It's running on the graph, but none of these skills happen to be real. The skills that we use at Cherre, we're not exposing them, obviously, in a demo environment. That's the point I'm trying to make. It's really cool.
Okay, fine.
Yeah, and I can create a skill on my own, and it just runs. Then I can turn them on and off. It also suggests skills. So then I can say, hey, I've seen you do this 3 times and tell it every time it said hospitality, you said, well, please exclude X. So how about, do you want a skill that when you ask about hospitality, you really mean exclude X? Yeah, it's a great idea. Let's add that to the skill set and apply that, right? And you might need it to be gated, so an admin needs to approve it or something like that. So that's the final thing I wanted to show, and hopefully that was exciting as well.
Oh my goodness. This is, so what's on the roadmap for 2026, LD?
For sure. So migration to that kind of, so migration to that new environment is definitely high on that list. So going from a universe where things are more static to where things are way more dynamic and can move. And then from there on into even bigger things. So I think that's kind of the most exciting part. And by far where we're headed, being able to have that agentic platform, both chat, tools, be able to call any agent on the fly, be able to build your own agents on the platform and make them run. All of that in a way that's SOC 1 and SOC 2 compliant, that's auditable, that's consistent, so it can be deployed in a real enterprise environment. That's really where we spend our time.
Right. Fascinating. Thank you. I'm going to sign off, actually. It's because we've been going for an hour. There's a lot of, I'm like stumbling because I got a whole list of questions, but we've already been going for an hour. So I'm just going to pause and say, LD Salmanson, you are co-founder and CEO of Cherre. Is that?
I am.
That's right. Yeah. Thank you. What a pleasure seeing you today again.
It was a pleasure.
And thanks for going through the demo.
Thank you so much. It was great.
All right. That was LD Salmanson, co-founder and CEO at Cherre. LD, always good to see you. Thanks so much. I do look forward to the day that we will actually meet in person. It would be a pleasure to meet you in person. Thank you for doing that demo. I know it was kind of off the cuff, but it was absolutely fascinating. It's really a huge help, I think, for prospects and for users to actually see what it looks like under the hood. It makes understanding what you do that much easier, and also really in understanding how powerful AI is and what the impact is going to be on the built world, on the real estate industry. So thanks for joining me. Thanks for doing the demo. And thank you to dear viewers and dear listeners. Appreciate you being here today. If we're not connected on LinkedIn, go ahead and let's connect. I've been posting a lot on LinkedIn. I'll post this podcast and some analytics and commentary as well. I've really been enjoying the LinkedIn journey and getting to know a lot of interesting people. So if you find me there, Adam Gower, of course, I think you can look me up just by looking up Gower Crowd in the search bar. It should pop up fairly quickly. So go ahead and connect if we are not already connected. All right, that's all I've got for you for today's episode. Until next time, this is Adam Gower signing off.